Hi, baby boomer fans. We are the Pfeiffer Sisters, Jackie and Janine, and love to talk about the 1950s. We're inviting you to reminisce with us as we explore the experiences of that decade.
We chronicle the distinct memories of our childhood in our book, While the Windmill Watched, a slice of rural America in the 1950s, which takes you on a notably historic journey through that often forgotten decade. We also want to hear about your experiences during the 1950s. We will feature guests whose special stories of that decade will bring to mind magical moments of reflection, some with tears, some with smiles, but above all, with a good dose of laughter.
We want you to chat with us as we bring to mind the sights and sounds so familiar to that time in history. Grab your favorite malt or Green River. Make sure that you are wide awake and get ready to be inspired about the 1950s. Welcome to the 1950s Fun Chat. Greetings on our inaugural broadcast on our YouTube channel, the 1950s Fun Chat. We are so happy that you are our guests this evening and even beyond, as our program will be archived on YouTube for your viewing pleasure at any time. Be sure to like our broadcast and, of course, subscribe to our channel. That just helps our channel to grow, and that we want to do. We know there's a lot of interest out there about the 1950s because readers of our book, While the Windmill Watched, have really explored those possibilities and told us that and through social media and through in person. The 1950s was a very, very special time, and so consequently, we want to chat with you about it. Our first guest on our maiden voyage, you might say, for our programming is my sister-in-law, Kay Knop Ogren, who grew up on a Southwest Iowa farm in the 1950s. She is a farm wife living in Northwest Iowa now, and at that point in her life right now, she is a retired kindergarten teacher in the Marcus Meredith Cleghorn School District and has two beautiful adult children and four grandchildren right now. So we, again, before we bring Kay on to begin to share her experiences, we do ask for grace from you as our viewers, because we are expanding into an area that is very new to us, an area of technology. We know that as we grow with this program and with this channel, that our experiences and our skills will become much broader and much more refined. So thank you for that. Kay, welcome to our show. Thank you. We are excited about it. Tell us about some of your experiences and growing up on an Iowa farm in the 50s.
Okay, but first I want to congratulate you two on your great book. And that's why I agreed to be one of your guests on the show, because I could relate to so many things that you gals wrote about from North Dakota, and the same things were in my childhood days in Southwest Iowa. So I thought I'd start with the country school days. Our family farm was very close to our country school, Grove number 5 in Grove Township. So my brother and I would walk to country school. It was an easy walk. I was there from grades kindergarten through 2nd, and I think my brother went through 5th or through 4th grade. So we had those great years in country school with our one teacher. We had about probably 12 to 14 students in grades kindergarten through junior high. And there are just lots of good memories. We would take our lunch in a brown paper sack or a lunch box with a thermos, and we could either sit inside on the cold days or we could go outside and have our lunches. So that was always fun. We would have restrooms, but they were outhouses. They were up the hill from the schoolhouse, and the pads were always scooped in the winter. So that was a blessing. I can only remember one or two that would have accidents because it was a little walk to get up that hill. Our teacher was wonderful as she would go from kindergarten to work with the two of us in kindergarten or two of us in first grade, then we would be assigned to a task, and some of the older students sometimes would help us while she was maybe working with the the first and second graders or second and third graders. So it was a real community of students and helpers, and we had a wonderful teacher.
Did you have any special experiences that to share about the school day?
Well, let's see. It would just, start first thing in the morning, of course, and with the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag, always. She had a great school bell that she would ring when we were outside playing,
Yes.
and to get us back into the school building. And I am the proud owner of that bell, which I just treasure from memories of the country school days. I just remember a lot of teamwork, the older students helping the younger. And I think that was wonderful. We got to know each other. And I think one of the older students became our babysitter when my parents did need a babysitter. It was one of the gals from school. I can remember there was a Christmas program, and I was chosen to be Mary. And my grandfather actually made a little cradle for the doll, portraying baby Jesus, to be in this Christmas program. That was a very special December, practicing and then having our parents come. I can remember recesses were great times. We had a great set of swing sets. Of course, I love swings to this day. The nice wooden seat with the long chains, and you could just soar for miles and see for miles and miles. And then we would play games with the ball, like over the roof. I think it was Annie over, or it wasn't called soccer then, but a kickball type game. In the winter, we would love the hill that we had to the west of our school. It was a dirt road. So obviously it was closed in the winter when it was drifted over. And we could bring our sleds to school. And I didn't actually have my own sled when I was really little. I was always sharing. And one day, Dad brought a brand new sled down to the school right at recess time. And so I was kind of the envy of everyone. And hopefully I shared with everyone, Jackie and Janine. I hope I did, but it was wonderful. And I have that sled to this day. But that was a very special memory from that winter. We didn't have the nice snowsuits and snow pants, but we wore corduroy pants under our dresses and skirts, and had more like a rubber galoshes and not a lined boot, but we wore a couple pair of socks. So yeah, great memories.
What happened, Kay, when those snow pants got really soaked and wet? What happened? How did they get dried?
Well, in the middle of the schoolhouse, there was a register, and you could lay, after you could easily, we had a little divider where the coats would hang. So you could go there after you took off your boots, take off your wet corduroy pants that were damp, and then just lay them on top of the register until the next recess.
Mm-hmm. And they'd be dry by then?
Pretty good. Yes. Yep. It was a good heater. It was a good, probably some type of a wooden furnace. I don't know much about that furnace. I was too little to have to help with that.
Sure. What was it like then when you went, you said it was second grade that you went to town school? What was it like to make that transition?
Right. And I did actually transition into third grade, and my third grade teacher, her name was Mrs. Morrow. Her husband was the superintendent of the country schools in the area at that time. So my parents knew this couple very well, Mr. and Mrs. Morrow. And Mrs. Morrow was wonderful, helping me transition into town school. I knew a few of the students in my class because of church and going to Sunday school with them. And I know when my brother transitioned into fifth grade in town, he also, Mom and Dad, were very pleased with the teacher he was assigned to. And they were both understanding of where we were coming from. And I never felt like I was behind or left out or anything. So we just fit right in, I guess.
Mm-hmm. That's wonderful. It often isn't like that, or we discovered in visiting with country kids from our area that, and even outside of that area, that sometimes and we can reflect on that too, as we had noted in the book, that the psychological impact for us as country kids moving into a city school or a town school was somewhat traumatic. I know Jackie and I both thought about that maybe our education didn't prepare us well enough, or that our home sewn clothes would be frowned upon when we went into high school and junior high. We just didn't know how to measure ourselves, you might say, in comparison to the kids who had lived in the city and had that kind of education. I do think sometimes that it might depend at what age a child made that transition, and maybe too how prepared you were for it.
Yes,
Jackie,
I
what do you
agree
think
with you
about
on the age. I was young enough,
Yeah.
I think, just to fit right into the 3rd grade. Yes.
Yes, I agree, Janine. And I do have a question for Kay. When you went to the town school, was there a bus route, or did your parents take you?
That's a good question, Jackie. We did start to ride a bus. Yes, Mr. Matthews was my bus driver. And the
Okay.
way our farm sat, the driveway, we couldn't wait at the end of our driveway. We either had to go to the south because of the knoll to the north, or we had to go north above the knoll to get on the bus, because he couldn't stop, because people coming from the north to the south would have hit the bus, and or people from the south to the north wouldn't know that he was parked up there waiting for us. So we walked either direction, and we made it work.
Good. Were you the first or the last to be picked up?
Next to the last, almost our entire career at school.
Okay.
We
Well,
had
that's
one
good that
gal
you
we
didn't have
picked up, 1 or 2 gals we picked up after us. And this one gal, I always remember, she ran to the bus. She had to run a little distance, and she always had her piece of toast in her mouth, running to catch the bus.
in her mouth? That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was still eating breakfast.
Yeah.
What time of day did your school begin in country school?
You know, I think around that, I feel like that 8-ish, 8:10, I can't say for sure, Janine.
Okay.
But I think about that 8 to 8:15-ish.
Okay.
Okay.
So it wasn't
And
too
the- and
early
the
in the
kid-
morning.
Sure.
Ended about that 3:30.
Okay. Were there any experiences that you had in country school that helped you or brought back memories when you were a 40+ year kindergarten teacher?
Oh, great memories, because I did have fun in kindergarten at country school. Probably, I would always read the Christmas story every year at Marcus, Meriden, Claiborne. Now we're Remsen Union. We would have the Christmas story. It brought back memories of their little nativity scene, and we would put that up at school too, with the Christmas tree. Going down, we had a hill at our school playgrounds. We do now, but we could only take basically the little saucers to go down the hill. Nothing with a runner on it, a little more dangerous and with a lot more children. Whenever they would pile up the snow from the streets by our school, like I was the teacher on duty that would let all the children go play on this mountain. And that's what we call it, a mountain of snow. And they loved it. And other teachers would too then, but there was definitely a little risk that they would be running into each other often, but we all had a great time. So that brought back good memories, just having the snow hills.
I have another question too in regard to teaching and that attitude of the students in country school and their behavior in the 50s versus how now in this decade, or in the year 2000 or your last teaching years, how were you as a teacher able to control behavior in your classroom versus what was done in the 50s?
Oh, well, I'm sure in country school, I always felt like the older students kind of took care of the younger ones. We were always looked after. And we didn't really have that kind of a relationship in the town schools. But as a teacher, day one, you set your perimeters, you set your boundaries. We have rules. These are what we follow. These are the consequences if you do not. So I was very blessed. I had a great student teaching experience before I ever got my first job. So I was prepared, and it worked through my decades of teaching.
Wonderful.
Right.
Wonderful. Moving on from your memories of country school. Is there another topic that you'd like to share with us?
Oh, well, in your book, when you girls talked about the chores that you had on your farm, I thought about the chores I had growing up and the responsibilities mom and dad gave us. And I was kind of the, what do I want to say, a farmer's daughter. I wanted to be outside more than I wanted to be inside. So I wanted to help my dad more. And so we would have, the chicken chores that we shared. And I can remember Fred and I doing those together a lot, having to gather the eggs and feed them and keep their grit filled and oyster shell, whatever they needed, I guess, and gathering the eggs and taking them in, packing the crates, and the dirty ones soaked in an enamel pan in this old kitchen sink for quite some time, because nobody would want to go they wouldn't want to wash those eggs. Let's see. So the chores with the chickens, and then eventually with the 4-H calves too, we would have our own responsibilities there. But there would be times on a rainy day when Dad would say, okay, in this, of course, he had a lot of hogs and we had different hog lots, and we would get a scraper and we'd scrape the manure off the hog lots. And it was just a family job, and it was pretty slick. Didn't take long when you had about 3 or 4 blades moving.
Mhm.
What else did we'd go out in the pastures. If there were thistles, my dad did not like seeing thistles going to seed in the pastures. So we would cut those thistles when they needed to be cut.
Yes.
And we were
going back to cleaning for the hogs, was that on a dirt platform or a cement platform then that you used that scraper?
Right. They were cement platforms. So
Okay.
it wasn't that difficult. Yeah, they were all cement. Yep.
Mhm.
Yeah,
And Dad would have the 3 stages where they farrowed, where they got them to a certain weight, and then to the 3rd hog house where they reached maturity and before they went to market.
Okay.
So the hogs were always moved 3 times. And that was an experience to move hogs that had only lived on cement from one hog house to the other on dirt or gravel. You'd think they'd walk. It was a difficult task sometimes to get them to go. And we'd take feed sacks and kind of rustle a feed sack and try to chase them. But some of them were very stubborn.
So, Kay, you've mentioned working with your father. What kind of a relationship chore-wise that you had with your mother? What did you do with her?
Sure. Well, the gardening was great because I liked being outside too. And my mom loved to plant every vegetable possible. And so I would help her with that. I can remember working in the flower beds too. And she had a beautiful rose garden. So we would help plant and pick and like pod peas or stem the beans help pick the raspberries. They had grapevines. I don't really remember picking many bunches of grapes, but she would can and freeze all these vegetables, and she would use a pressure cooker to process the green beans. And on those days, boy, we didn't go in and out of the kitchen. She didn't want any doors or windows open. Yeah, shucks.
And it's probably similar experiences to what Jackie and I had, because our mom would can a lot of produce from the garden, and we worked in the garden as well. It was just a way of living back then. That's how people were able to provide sustenance for their families on the farm year round. I guess I'd always be curious when we need to interview someone who grew up in an urban area in that time, and to see if they had a garden and if they preserved all their produce at that time.
Mm-hmm.
But Kay, do you have a story to tell us about that? Once picking certain cherries, was that of interest to you? Oh, I think we lost our reception with Kay. The nice memorable thing about our whole fun chat is that we can learn to grow in technology, and whether it be our guests or Jackie and me at the same time. We've had a wonderful conversation with Kay Knop Ogren, who talked with us about her experiences in country school and about her experiences of chores growing up on the farm in the 1950s. And so at that time, we do want to close our program for now. We've had a wonderful time talking about the country life in the 1950s. And now that we have visited with our first guest, we'd like to be sure that you stay with us on our YouTube channel. Jackie, did you have anything else in conclusion?
I guess maybe I'd like to know about our next guest.
Oh, yes. Our next guest is going to be a lady who we consider to be one of the matriarchs of the Menoka, North Dakota community where we were raised as children. And that is Marge Perkins. Many people know Marge Perkins in the area and really in the county because she had a very important job in that county, not only being a farm wife at that time. So join us next week when we have Marge Perkins on as our guest. And she will be interesting as well because she was a married mother of four during the 1950s. And so she can clue us into some experiences that she has had.
And I'd like to reiterate, be sure to click the like button and the red subscribe button. Tell your friends, even your relatives, about the fun chat, the 1950s fun chat. So we invite you to join us every week on Monday, 8 p.m. Central, or anytime after that, to view our archive program on this channel.
Until then, let your mind wander to the swell time of poodle skirts, soda jerks, and cool cars. We've had fun today. We hope you have had too. See you next time on the 1950s Fun Chat. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.